All right, in today's episode, we sit down with Cody Cohen, former Recon Marine, former law enforcement officer, and a partner at Genesis Arms. They build the baddest AR-style shotguns you have ever seen in your life. Let's go. Hey, welcome to the North Idaho Experience. We are a podcast for the people of North Idaho and those who are North Idaho curious. We try to bring light the stories of the people and businesses that call North Idaho home. And if you are thinking about making North Idaho your home, give our real estate team a call, text, or email. Cody Cohen, welcome to the show. We've been trying to put this together for a while, but you travel a lot. Eric and I are busy. It's tough. But Cody is a former Recon Marine. Got some wild stories from that lifestyle we're going to talk about. Former Coeur PD. And he's a member of Genesis Arms. They make the baddest shotguns in the world, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
damn
fair.
legit. Yeah. So these are topics we're going to hit today. Stick around. We've got lots of info. If you're watching on video, I think Cody brought some free gifts for me and Eric. Just kidding. I can't even say that with a straight face. He's got one of the shotguns. We're going to check that out so you guys can see it on video as well. So stick around for that. All right, dude. Background, man. So Marine Corps first, I'm guessing. Did you get Marine Corps right out of like high school, that kind of deal?
Well, I'd like to start a little bit earlier because I was actually born and raised in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh, you're one of the rare ones.
Yeah.
It's hard to find these days.
I got to listen to my parents complain about people moving up here from California.
Unbelievable. I can't believe people would do that.
No. I think it's a little bit different today versus in the past. People coming up today, it seems like they're trying to relocate and avoid the conditions that they're in and not have that environment anymore. So,
yeah.
So born and raised here, was at the Blue Hospital, Kootenai. And so, a true native.
Yeah. And
seen a lot of change in the area.
I'm glad you have that perspective because I think there is a misconception there because we get a lot of beef from people about Californians, Oregons, Washingtonians moving here and changing the culture. I'm like, man, that's not our experience in our full-time job, which is real estate. Like, we get a lot of clients from out of state and they're super conservative. They're fleeing for their lives from these other states that are putting in ridiculous gun laws and, medical law, things that they just can't live the lifestyle anymore. So it's like, I'm sure back in the day that was common, but yeah, we're not attracting that type of person anymore, at least up here in North Idaho. I don't know about Boise.
We might be a little lucky to some of the people that generally listen and tolerate some of the stuff that we discuss and talk about and the manner in which we do so.
Like that conversation we just had?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much that.
Got it.
But I try to remind people of that too. Majority of folks that are moving here from another state are going to take an active invested interest in keeping this community not like that.
Yeah.
So in some way, because I see a lot of the dark stuff that's on social media, like get everybody out, close Idaho down, whatever that is. It's funny, some of the ones that move up here, they saw what ruined in a lot of ways their hometown that they'd lived in for 30 or 40 years. Man, they invest in our local politics here. They realize the importance of a sheriff's election or city council members or policies that are coming out of Boise. They like to pay attention to that, or like the judicial watch stuff that's starting to gain some traction. So it's kind of been my experience, the people that are coming from other states, man, they like it. They want to be involved in the community here so they can keep it that way.
Yeah, I would agree. Even within the Kootenai County Republican Party, I've been to like the Lincoln's Day, their kind of gala fundraiser, and we were part of that. We actually provided them 2 themed Trump guns for that, and auctioned off for good fundraising for the event. And honestly, what I took out of that was those involved in the Kootenai County Republican Party, and it's through the whole state as well, the Republican Party. They are more active and in favor of conservatism than I really gave them credit for. And also to the point where Labrador actually came up and he was a guest speaker there, and he pointed out, he said, there's Republicans in New York and there's Republicans in Idaho, and we're not the same.
Right.
And I was like, yes. And he even recognized that. And so he's like, it's part of this is a education of what a conservative Republican is. And I think Idaho attracts that idea. And we got a good party here that's, working towards those efforts to maintain, freedom and liberty.
Yes, and less government intrusion.
That's right.
Right before this, we got another call from a couple that live on the west side. They've been in Puget Sound since the 80s. I mean, one was Boeing, the other was in software development industry, so you can imagine they did really well. But they've lived over there for 45 years. That's been there, and they're leaving now. I guess 35 years. I was told there'd be no math. I was a submariner and a cop. All right, don't judge me. But but they're ready to leave that. They've contributed a lot to that community, and it goes back to the same thing. States are now competing for contributing members of society. Like, we're competing for good citizens.
Yeah.
So try to remember that if you're one of the ones that's been here for a long time, recognize that majority of the people that we get coming up here are contributing members that want to take an active role in the community.
Yeah. I know the pushback would be like, hey, we don't want anybody to move here, right? Like, we just want a smaller population. That's just not a reality.
No, but in all truthfulness, I do tell people to come visit in the winter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a great place. You should really enjoy it. December, November is a great time. January.
Yeah. It is.
And then they can make those good decisions if they want to be part of it, for sure. But I will say, from when I was a kid to now, the winters they're very disappointing.
Yeah, it's nothing. I remember that.
Funny.
I grew up in South Hill and Spokane, so I was in this area, and we had a boat out in Coeur d'Alene, like back early 90s. And man, winters were different.
Yeah, winters would actually almost freeze the Coeur d'Alene Lake across the whole lake when I was a kid, and I had snow that was 5 feet tall where dogs are going over the fences.
Right.
That was very normal, and now it's like my kids get like 2 days of sledding.
Yeah.
And then it's just rain the rest of the time.
You literally
and freezing cold.
Yeah. You got to take that day off when you get enough snow to go sledding, because we pull them behind the side by side like real rednecks up in Hauser.
I 100% let my kids take the day off.
Yeah,
even though it's not a snow day, I'm like, enjoy it, whatever.
It is weird though. It's there's those old pictures of people driving cars across the middle of Coeur d'Alene. I mean, driving across the lake.
Yep.
Okay, so I grew up in upstate New York, similar latitude. Shitty weather when I grew up too, and same thing. You look at historical pictures of the Hudson River, huge river, half a mile across. They used to do ice boat racing on it. If you ever seen those, it's like a little catamaran on skates. And when I was growing up, that river never froze over. It was chunky of ice, but never solid, and that was a common thing back in the day. So, same thing, yeah.
Yeah, times change.
Kids these days will never understand.
Well, it's funny. It's good to have you on. It's been a while. We've been trying to set this up, and Cody and I used to work together at PD. It's funny hearing stories about you guys growing up in your little group, because obviously I work with the guy who shall remain nameless. We'll just say Z. But hearing about what life was like back then growing up in Coeur d'Alene, and I don't know if you know Sewell, but he's in my reserve unit with me. So I hear about it from another side, with you and Z running roughshod.
I can't confirm anything.
I can neither confirm nor deny. But it was like old school, how kids are supposed to grow up outside all the time, causing problems, kind of picking on each other, right? That plays a role in child, especially young male development. But man, that's what
we were making camouflage paint out of lotion, and then we would have to reapply as we played in the woods because we didn't have the actual camo paint, so we were taking like bubble tape and like making our own colors and reapplying in the woods. And, I was pretty much destined at that point to probably be of service at some point in my life. So
you and him both, they both ended up in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, we ended up making our own ghillie suits and running around. I remember getting chased by the farmer. I lived by a field, and when he'd be out there getting the straw and baling everything and making the squares and then stacking the pile, and we'd be out there hiding from him, and he'd come driving right at us, and we'd take off running. It was nutty. It was pretty fun though.
That's what it's all about. Then they both end up in Marine Corps, and then both end up at the PD.
Yes,
that's strange.
Yes.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
All right, Marine Corps right out of high school, or
no. Yeah, so I in high school I did martial arts most of my adolescence and into high school. Really, I had a passion for martial arts. Always watched like American Ninja, like all the classics, Shinobi and you name it. I watch it, Shogun. And so anyways, really love martial arts, competed locally. And this is really even before MMA was a thing. And then once I graduated high school, my mom was like, you got to go to college somewhere. So I picked one school, didn't have any direction, didn't know what I was going to do. I tried to get my buddy Z to join the military then because I was like, that's a direction. And then he's like, no, I'm going to go to college. I was like, oh. I mean, we've been friends since kindergarten. So I was like, well, my best friend isn't going to go, so I guess I'll just try college too. Anyways, I got accepted, which was terrible. But in about a year and a half, I was playing Counter-Strike and I was eating midnight rations, got fat, and got kicked out for bad grades. So I moved back home, moved back here, lived with my aunt, went to NIC, got my grades sorted, and figured out what I was going to do. And that's when I moved to Arizona. During that time, Z actually got he enlisted into the Marines, and I was like, "You bastard!
Yeah.
We were supposed to do that together.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm going now. And I was like, and I, for some reason in my mind, I didn't want to stop what I was doing midway. And so I got back into what I was doing. And then he actually did a first push to Fallujah. And during that, when he got back, I mean, I felt totally disconnected and was like, I can't do another deployment with you over there and me here. Yeah. And so I told him, I'm going to join. This is pretty hilarious. He's like, you shouldn't join. I was like, why? Because the Marines suck. And I was like, what do you mean they suck? At the time, I'm living in Arizona, so in Phoenix, and so he drove over after he got back from Fallujah, which was the push into Fallujah. And he's like, no, it just sucks. I was like, well, what did you just do last week? He's like, well, we were up in 29 Palms, and we did fire maneuver. I was like, well, what's that? He's like, oh, we were shooting machine guns and throwing hand grenades. Oh, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, what sucks about that? He's like, everything. I was like, okay, well, tell me more. He's like, yeah, you like shoot, and then you run up, and you shoot, and you run up, and the machine guns are going off, and you get in the parapet, and you run around, and then it's like a bunker, and he's like, and then you throw a live hand grenade. And I was like, bro, I want to do that so bad.
You're not doing a good job dissuading me.
And that's why I said, if your argument is that sucks, I'm definitely joining.
Yeah,
and
I want it to suck more.
So he goes, okay, well, I guess you should join, and then you'll know why it sucks. And I remember after I joined, I ended up in boot camp, and I remember laying there one night looking out the window at the parade deck, and it's like month 1 of 3, and I was just like, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks. But another part of me sadistically really enjoyed like everything about it, the challenge, what you're joining and becoming part of. In fact, when we were first looking at joining, I went to the recruiters. So first I went to the Air Force, and this is pretty funny. They said, hey, I want to do some special forces for you guys. Now, Air Force is a wise choice.
Yeah.
Once you've done some service, Air Force is where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they get a lot of shit, but honestly, it's not a bad gig.
It's a good deal. It's definitely a good deal.
So, and I don't regret my decision where I'm at, but, I'm just saying. But he says, well, if you're going to go into the, tier 1 teams within the Air Force, you need to be a swimmer. Are you a swimmer? I was like, yeah, I play Marco Polo. And he's like, no, like that, you ain't going to make it, buddy. And I was like, oh, okay. So I roll over to the Army, and I was like, hey, what do you guys got? I want to, maybe I'll be a sniper or something. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. We'll get you a little bonus. And this is like way before 9/11 and all that stuff. So it was like a small signing bonus. And I was like, okay, cool. All right. And then I go over to the Marine Corps, and I was like, hey, Army just offered me this amount of money. He's like, we don't offer money. You get to call yourself a Marine. So I was like, fuck. Yes, I will do that.
Yes, sign me up.
Yeah. I pretty much knew I was going to become a Marine. Later in life, when going through SEER school and stuff, I got that pride broken out pretty quickly. Get a little humility there.
Yeah.
But so that's really I knew I was destined to go in to the Marine Corps, and I actually wanted to be a scout sniper, which I never got to accomplish. But that's what drove me into it. So my buddy comes back, and I end up joining in 2004. And that was...
How old were you at the time?
22, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, about 22. So that automatically made me, older, more mature. Everybody's like 18, maybe 19.
Right.
There was challenges there. The late entry program, I was selling Audis at the time in Arizona, and I go into the recruiter's office, like, hey, I'm going to sign up, but I got life, got a lease, got a car. I need to sell my car, got to get out of my lease. I don't want to be breaking my lease. So I lay it all out. He's like, okay, well, then your date would be September of 2020, 2020, or 2004, I mean. And I was like, okay. And then I left. And he's like, what? And then he called me. He's like, hey, we're doing this thing. You want to come in? I was like, no, I'm good. He's like, so he got kind of nervous that I wasn't going to actually show up. But I literally knew nothing about the Marine Corps. I didn't know rank structures. I didn't do any PT. Like, I literally knew nothing. So when I got there, I was like, oh, shoot, like there's platoons and squad leaders and like the whole structure. I was just like by a fire hose. Ended up graduating as an honor guide out of boot camp and out of SOI. SOI was a good experience. When I got so I graduated boot camp, honor guide, first qual, swim, rifle, had all the top tier stuff, first class PFT. And so when I was in School of Infantry, they said, hey, these guys are going tomorrow to a recon indoc. And I wasn't on that list. And there was a gentleman there, and I wish I remembered his name. He had actually come over from the Army to join the Marines. And he had already served multiple years, but because he went from Army to Marines, he had to do boot camp. And he was the honor guide over the whole over our whole boot camp class. And so he's like, no, he's like, we need to go get that. And I didn't even know what recon was. So he pushed me to go to the staff sergeant and say, hey, we need to be at this tomorrow. We're not on the list and we meet all the criteria. And so the staff sergeant was like, no. And we're like, no, we have to go. And we were just persistent. And he goes, listen, if you go and you don't pass, you're on bathroom duty the rest of SOI. And I was like, oh man, that's a lot of toilets.
That's a lot of poo.
And when you're around Marines, like it is a dirty place to be.
Yes.
So
frat house with no beer and no women, dude.
Yeah. So anyways, I did go. I ended up passing the recon indoc, and that got me to go to recon after School of Infantry, which was, ultimately eye-opening and life-changing for me, because that really was a pivotal point in my life where you get to meet superhumans.
Right.
Like, everybody knows about Navy SEALs. Everybody reads the books. Everybody sees the movies made about them. But I'll tell you, no idea what recon was. But they have a long lineage that's just as honorable and incredible as, any Navy SEAL. And particularly the people that were in my cadre in the pre-BRC programs and the BRC programs, they were doing Trojan horse missions and stuff during the OIF campaigns and had been to Afghanistan, and just absolute machines.
Right.
I like to tell this story. And when I say superhuman, I don't know if Corporal Jarvis, if he's going to see this, but he literally put an imprint in my mind. So part of our indoc, what we do is everybody lines up on the edge of the pool, and then you jump in the pool, and one guy at a time dives down, grabs a rifle, brings it up overhead. And it's a simple tread of 2 seconds, and then you drop the rifle back down, go, and then I think you jump off the tower. Well, there's a line of people for this indoc, and it's 35, 40-ish people, say 50 less, okay, give or take. I don't remember exactly, but it's a pretty big line. But you do the math, 2 seconds a person, and all the time to get in and get out, and next person in. Well, when the first guy went down to grab the rifle, Corporal Jarvis went underwater too. But when he came back up, he had a 45-pound plate. Dude. And he never dropped it for all the people in line. And I remember getting to the top of the tower, and I'm looking down and going, how is that guy still treading water? And that was my first, when my mind was but you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And then, for pre-BRC, at the time they were doing, this is before, they still had pre-Raiders, they still had Force Recon, but they didn't have any of the MARSOC community or any of that stuff established. And so I get through all that, I get to the qualified, and then we start our training for 2-a-days to get ready for the physicalness of being a Recon Marine is hard, because you got land nav and patrolling phase, and then also amphibious. So you gotta have good physical fitness. It's just bottom line.
Question. Was it hard? You're a big dude. You're taller than I would expect. Did that add an extra element of difficulty for you? Aren't most special operators in the 160-pound range on average, right?
So it's funny you say that. There was another sergeant there. I think it was Sergeant Jacqueline. I remember. So when you get to recon, you wear a rope around your shoulders and around your neck, and you're called a roper, and you run everywhere you go. And I remember I got on the bus, and I'm seeing these people, and they're all these just Greek gods, let's just say.
Right.
They're all jacked, and they're just insane. Mm-hmm. I could tell stories about all these guys, but Sergeant Jacqueline sits there, and he looks at me, and he's like, hey. I was like, hey. He's like, you're a pretty big dude. I was like, yeah. He's like, you better pass. We need more big guys, because he was huge, and his arms were freaking like Hulk Hogan. They were massive. So, yeah, most guys aren't, 6. I'm 6'6", 6'7", ish. So most guys aren't in that category. But when you have to carry a lot of weight and move over a lot of ground,
it's the joints. That's talking to the guys that went to BUD/S. They say the bigger dudes, it's your joints they give in. It's all that weighted stuff, and eventually, usually it's knees or hips or something.
Right. I never really gave it thought, but I would imagine that all the martial arts I did as a kid with flexibility, you get the snapping, the kicking, the stretching, a lot of plyometrics and isometric kind of strengthening. I imagine that helped with tendon strength and joint health. So maybe that helped set me up for sure. But I end up in one of them. There's Sergeant Guay. He was a Canadian. Was in there, and he actually. I remember we're doing a run, swim, run, and you would run to main side, swim at main side, and then you'd run back. And so it was I don't remember, a couple miles over, 2,000 meters swim, and then you'd have to run a couple miles back. And Sergeant Guay grabs his cigarette, and he literally just drags the whole thing, sucks it down. He's like, all right, let's go. And he starts blowing it out and takes off, and he beat everybody to main side.
Just to show that he can.
Yeah, and I was like, I remember running behind him going, one, he's like, he's not a super tall guy. We had another one, Corporal Bull, who was this really tall guy. We called him the Gazelle, and he was actually like a marathon runner. He was insane. But Sergeant Guay was not that. He's like maybe 5'5", 6", like at tops, and just takes off the main side. Beat everybody in the swim, got out. We circle up again. He takes another massive cigarette drag, and then beats us all back. And I remember I got back, and I was just like, man, I don't know. But that actually, on that run, swim, run, I actually broke my foot. And so to the case of being bigger, I had been putting so much impact over time against my body with the two-a-days that I ended up breaking my foot. So, which was a bummer because that was the last workout before Monday. This was like the two-a-days was just like it wasn't even pre-BRC. It was just it's called the RIP program, Recon Induct program, where they just get you fit and you do some knowledge-based stuff to get you ready for pre-BRC. So I didn't get to go to pre-BRC. They pulled me out and they sent me into a headquarters battalion. And as an 0311, I get deployed over to Iraq with headquarters. But after that deployment, I did get to come back, and I was out of our platoon. There was like, I think 3 of us. Maybe it was 2 of us. I think 3 got to stay at battalion, and only 2 of us actually passed through recon at that point. So everybody else in the whole platoon, they all went back to the fleet.
How many, like for people that don't know, roughly how many people is that?
I think we probably were 14 in that platoon.
Is that pretty normal attrition rate? That's pretty atrocious for
getting
people through.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and then when the BRC class, the pre-BRC class, this was when I got back from that deployment. Recon had created contract reconnaissance Marines, so you could actually enlist and then get a $10,000 bonus. And I was like, hey, can I get that retroactive? And they're like, Marine Corps is like, no,
absolutely not.
So it was a little frustrating too at the time. Just being a child myself I was like, man, how is it this guy's going to just get to come here? He didn't have to even try out. Now he gets to do this, and then if he passes, he gets 10 grand. Now I'm like, who cares?
Right.
But at the time, you're a little bitter about, everyone graduates and those guys all got $10,000 checks and you walk home with.
Like, oh, that's cool.
I'd be a little bitter about that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I think that's valid.
So, but when I got back, that class I think was 40 or 50 guys in that pre-BRC class. And if I remember right, I was in the top 3 of that class, and I think there was only 5 people that passed out of 50.
What knocks most of them out?
I think it's the land nav gets guys, but it's just the quit, right? Like guys just stop working at some point and they give up on themselves and they give up on the mission. And so I just think that it's this internal drive of I'm not going to ever quit. And so I think guys just end up quitting. They don't work through the land nav, instead of like, running to the next, checkpoint to get all of the markers checked off. They just like, I'll walk a little bit, and then you don't get a mark, and then you miss the qualification. So those are the type of things that happen, especially in the pre-BRC. But the Marine Corps was so at a deficit for Recon Marines because they were standing up the MARSOC division, which later would become Raiders. They put a blind eye to those guys in pre-BRC that didn't pass. And so when I went to BRC, there was guys in that class who had not passed, but they still got to go because the Marine Corps was just at a deficit. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying, it happened, versus 5 guys going, having a very small reconnaissance class or waiting until they get enough to fill a BRC class. And then I was the last class to go through basic reconnaissance course at Coronado, which was right. I mean, literally the Navy SEALs guys are doing the same stuff that we're doing, except, they have their Hell Week, which is basically boot camp for the Marines and SOI for infantry all in like a week for them. And they just trash them. And I literally could see the misery on their face.
Oh, imagine.
Yeah. So...
and that brings a smile to your face. I noticed
it does. You did have
a little smile.
Yeah, everybody gets a little joy of, we're not sharing this alone. It's not just like we learned earlier in the intro. It's just not an America thing. Sometimes it's a Netherlands thing or an international thing as well.
Just so people are aware, what Cody brought some of this back, and he liked to use some of this experience to empower other people in his own special way of motivating. I've experienced this twice, me personally, when I went through the police academy, coming back from, I'd done 9.5, 10 years in the Navy and came in, and they started a new academy tradition when he was the PT instructor. They had Black Friday. And then I got to fight him during the Fight for Life. Oh. He was especially motivating, which was funny to me because we had a lot of young kids going into the police academy that had no prior experience at all. He would show up 3 days a week for PT, and every single PT day they'd be like, "You think he's going to show up?" I'm like, yes, he's absolutely. He lives for this. He's going to be there, and they'd see, like, they'd hope, because Pete was the other one, and Pete was kind of the nice guy. He was like the mentor and coach. Cody was not that role. Cody was the consequences. He was the standards, and I would watch the blood drain out of their face when his truck would pull in. Or it'd be your super old Volkswagen.
My 85 Volkswagen Golf diesel rattling into the lot.
Yeah, that rat trap would pull in, and everybody would be like, "Oh, God, there he is. There he is. He's right there." And yeah, he was. He would empower some people and motivate people to push a little bit further.
Yeah, it's, like I said, I got exposed to guys at reconnaissance that changed my perspective of what a human being is capable of.
Oh, yeah.
And my belief of service is just that, we talked about it multiple times as law enforcement is that when somebody calls 911, they're expecting Batman to show up.
Right. Yeah.
They're not expecting the guy who barely passed his pistol qual or only did fitness during the academy. Mm-hmm. And so, Pete and I, after I graduated the police academy, he asked me to join, and he said, "What would you do different?" And I said, "Hey, I think that we need to have a mindset ideology more than just this is just fitness." And so that was my whole, we needed to form the mind. And so it's like, hey, are you a victim or are you a victor? If you get in a fist fight with somebody as a police officer, you might be alone. And the person you just called isn't really going to be able to help you because they just called you for help. Now, that's not saying that's all the time, but do you want to rely on that?
Yeah.
So the idea was, how do we empower people? We need to condition their mind to never give up and never quit. In fact, one of the biggest rewards I have is that we had a cadet out of the academy, and he was going to go to Kellogg, and he was small, and I was honestly felt personally, this guy has no place in law enforcement, and he could be a liability. So then I took it upon me to make sure that he got special attention during PT. And when it came to the Fight for Life evolution, which, they do a simulation where they jump out of a car because they're doing a traffic stop. Guy jumps out of the car and they run around the building. You do a little obstacle course, hopscotch thing, and then you run in the building, and then you wrestle jiu-jitsu kind of style with a guy that's like, almost 300 pounds, not me.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're doing that, and he just makes you just tired and exhausted, and you just ran a sprint around the building. And then I'm lurking in the closet in a full red man suit,
like he's a Sasquatch.
He's getting black.
I recall.
Why are you sweating, Eric?
Oh, dude, it is. But you're chasing him, by the way, or somebody it might have been Brad.
Yeah.
But Brad's you're not going to catch him.
No.
Like, that's the thing. You're not going to catch him. It does teach a lot of valuable lessons.
So I come, as soon as his back, Jeff would get them turned so they're back when they stand up, I'm right behind them. And so that's when they first encounter me, and I'm like, "What are you doing in my house?" And I hit them, and I just push them, and that's when they turn and they look and they go, "Oh my God!
Oh shit!
I don't have anything left. I'm going to die." And so this particular cadet, I needed him to overcome that moment. And I really wanted him to feel it. And I alluded to it earlier. I've been through these moments of my own life where I've literally sobbed myself because I got a growth, right? And so you realize your mortalness. And so I was like, he's got to learn that today. And so I picked him up, literally off the ground, and I threw him against the wall. He bounced off the wall, and I grabbed him and held him up off the ground. And I said, and I said it this loud, and I threw him against the wall, and I said, "And you'll never see your family." Threw him off the end. "You'll never have kids, and no one will know." I did like 4 or 5 throws, and he came off the wall the last time. I tossed him on the ground, and you could see on his face, he didn't know what he was going to do to defeat me. And so I didn't let him quit.
Right.
And the other instructors jumped in. They said, "You get up. You can't quit now." And so eventually, after beating on him a little bit and him beating back, you could see he was finding it in him, and then he let it out, and he hit me really hard, and I was like, "Yes, it has occurred."
Right.
And then he hit me hard again and again and again, and he did it in the way where it was not completely out of control, but it was the way where if he would have executed this in life, he would have received the same success. And so I gave it to him, and he makes the arrest and he ends. So this was a huge deal for me, right? But I don't know if it really had an impact on him. I just know I humbled him for a moment.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You see some of that in fire, and I still remember it because it is it's a visceral human reaction. I didn't give it enough credit. That was probably as gassed as I've ever been in my entire life. And you a-holes made me go last.
And I fought everybody, by the way.
I know.
Lived for it.
I'm a firm believer that it's really important to toe that line and have to fight under extreme exhaustion. Like that's why jiu-jitsu is so powerful.
100%.
I love jiu-jitsu for that purpose because, damn, you do that 3 times a week. Like if you have the right training partners, you can push yourself to that full exhaustion where you like feel like you have nothing left to give. But then, like, you can learn, you get a little bit more. You always have a little bit more.
Right.
And that comes back to what you said earlier about, like, you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes you need those role models because you don't even know what your limit. A lot of people don't even know what their limits are, even close to it, until you see another guy do it. You're like, holy shit, he can do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can.
I think that's why a lot of people got into the, cold plunges and, you know, a daily reminder that you can do something and overcome it.
Yeah.
And I would always tell people, like, I've already been really cold. I'm good.
Yeah.
But I want to finish. So I went to the academy and I had some old uniforms and I was going to give it back to the academy so they could recycle the NIC Academy clothing. And that kid is there. And he was like, hey, I want to tell you a story. So he goes, I was hunting a felon. This is obviously after he graduates. He's at Kellogg. He's like, I'm hunting a felon, and he said he made threats. He's going to kill police officers. He was, felony drug arrest is what he had a warrant for. So he's tracking, kind of where his hot spots are. He finds him, goes to initiate the stop. The guy takes off out of the car, just like Fight for Life.
Yeah.
So he jumps out. He calls out the foot pursuit. He's chasing him. Guy cuts through a yard. Goes over a fence, which, by the way, in the Fight for Life, we have a wall that you have to scale.
Right. Yep.
So he's running at that fence, and he goes, I literally remember thinking, Cohen is on the other side of that wall. And I'm going to make him understand what's different today. Yeah. And he goes, I went over that wall, and he goes, and it wasn't you, it was him. And he's waiting for me. And he comes up at me and he goes, I didn't even wait. And he goes, I hit him so hard. And I hit him again. And I hit him a third time. And that guy laid on the ground and he gave up. And I said, you're under arrest. And he goes, I throw him over. I throw him in handcuffs. And he goes, the only reason that happened is because you did that to me and you changed me. And I was like,
dude, I'll take it.
Oh my gosh, there's nothing better than that.
No, it was, it was super impactful. And,
and for you too. It may be just as much for you as it is for them.
Totally.
Man, when you're training and teaching, you get a lot of that back.
Yeah.
That's a cool moment.
That's an incredible moment.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Well, dude, you had to have those experiences that you had because you had guys like that. I can hear it in the way you talk about them. Some of those, the corporal and sergeant that, man, they were superhuman then. I can tell you in my class, you were feared and revered, right? Like there was that. So when they come out of Fight for Life and you say, hey, I didn't expect that. That meant something to those guys that were going through that.
Yeah.
It's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it's always a psychological mess up when you're looking at your instructors and they're always doing the work with you and you're like, why am I so tired? And they look like they're not at all.
It was the most annoying thing in the world.
Yeah.
He would be destroying us and
what was your workout of choice to destroy people? You know what I mean? Like so our academy, we had 4 or 5 PT staff and they would take a different day and each one had a different specialty.
I got a good one that I actually was told I couldn't do this one again. This is a good one.
Was that the river one?
It was.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember. I remember that one.
Remember? Yep. So it's called a wagon wheel, and so the cadre runs in front. That was me to set a pace, and everybody has to keep up. Well, when the line got drawn out far enough, Pete was at the tail end, and I would pay attention to it. Nobody could stay with me, and then I would wagon wheel everybody. I'd get everybody in a wagon wheel, and then we would do calisthenics together. And then once everybody got tired, we went back to running.
Oh, man.
That day we ran 5 miles.
Yeah.
And we ran over to the river near the academy, and I made everybody get in the water and put their feet down in the water and then lift their feet above the water. And so it was like they were fatigues, right?
Yeah,
like
boots.
like flutter kicks.
Oh yeah, flutter kicks on the river.
And then
rocks.
I made them flip around, put their head down, get their head out of the water, put their feet up the hill.
They said no to that
and then they made them run around this fallen down bridge, the pillar that's still there. And then we got everybody out, and then we took off running again. And that was one of my, honestly, I had a great time that day.
That sounds like a fun workout.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
That.
It was a lot of fun.
It was character building.
Yeah, 100% it was character building. Yeah. But like I said, I looking back, I think they have to have, even when you go back and look at the academy now, that was a hard part about leaving a little bit, because you have to have good instructors there. That's such a crucial role in establishing the standards for the way they're going to operate moving forward in the rest of their career. Because some of those guys are going to agencies that either just don't focus on training, they don't have the funding, they don't have the level of knowledge. No. So some of them have to leave the academy with a higher standard and take that with them. Right. And tell them that all the time.
Right.
So. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where people, they just, like I said, they don't know what they don't know, and it's important when you have a limited amount of time with somebody to just. You got to leave a fingerprint. You got to leave an imprint. And honestly, part of my belief is that if you want to be part of change, if you're upset with something, you don't just get to complain about it. You have to do something. Be part of a solution. And so, when Pete came to me and he was like, "Hey, do you want?" I was like, "Absolutely." I see a huge deficit here, and this is an easy way to do that. And in fact, one of the other things I don't know if it was with you as well, but I put in we had reading assignments, and it was we had to read Warrior's Ethos. And I don't know if you guys have read that, but that
was
book
part of it.
Is a book about mindset of the Spartans, and so. People had to write it, and I said, what does it mean to you? And there's no right answer, but you had to read it, and you had to write something. The other one that I would pose, and again, this is just the ideas. We have to be, I believe warriors, all right, they transition from warriors to champions, and that transition is that we're intellectual, okay? We're not just a fighter that goes into a cage and I just maul at somebody. No. We're sophisticated people. We have morals that we live by. We are, or that we live under as well, right? So, the other question I had is, what is the difference between law enforcement and a peace officer? And the reason I did that is because there's a huge discrepancy between the two. And I encourage everybody to stop and think about what the difference is.
Oh, yeah.
Because POST stands for Peace Officer Standard and Training. It's not a law enforcement standards and training. So why is that? What is a peace officer? The role of a peace officer is always to show up and establish peace. That's it. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that somebody has to go to jail?
No. And there's not a lot of hard lines out there on enforcement. I mean, discretion, I think, is one of the most important roles we have as cops, as peace officers.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I also think that is culture. Because you can watch YouTube videos. I watch them still. There's officers out there doing things that are a bit silly. Traffic stops that lead to shootings because they didn't need to, right?
Right.
That always drove me nuts when guys would push it.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to resolve. You can resolve this, and maybe even you got your what's the word I'm looking for? Like your ego is going to take a little bit of a hit, right?
Yes,
right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
To have a peaceful outcome, that's okay.
Right.
Yes. And you got to be willing to do that. And a lot of guys are not a lot. Some guys are not willing to do that, and they're just like, I'm going to maintain my fucking ego,
right?
And I'm going to push this shit. And now we're involved in a physical altercation, and now someone's getting hurt. And
yeah, I mean, you're punching some dude.
It's not necessarily right.
Yeah, and I think that is a maturity thing as well. And so that's one of the things that I would put out there. And then the other thing about law enforcement versus peace officer standard training is I think it's really important that people are convicted to why they do what they do, and they understand why they have the authorities of law that they do, and understand that if a law is written and it is unconstitutional, that is not a law to be followed, because your peace is established for liberty through the Constitution of your state and your country. Before anything. And so just because a city council decides to make some law about something, for example, City of Coeur obviously has one for, no fighting in public. Mm-hmm. Okay, but is it mutual combat legal under state code?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you reconcile these two things? If the state says that two people that decide to fight each other is mutual combat and that's lawful under the law,
right?
Why is it and how is it that you take away the liberty of two people to have a physical quarrel? I don't know that that's legal. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying cities do this pretty frequently. We saw this under other things too.
Oh, states do it too.
They do it too, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, obviously. But I'm just saying, as a peace officer, you need to know those things and know, why do you do what you do? And what are you willing to do for that
And it's easier said than done because, I get comments on here a lot because we talk about these things a lot. And there's the pension trap, right? Like, there's ways to keep. You got to pay your bills, man. So I saw this during the George Floyd riots. Things were pushing the envelope of constitutional, absolutely. And a lot of guys were talking about it behind the scenes, like, hey, what's our point where we don't do what they're asking us to do here? And it's easy to talk about, but it's not easy to actually take action and be like, you know what, I'm not going to do that because they hold these things over your head. Your job, your pension, I got to pay my bills, all of that stuff. So, and I happen to know from Eric that you talk about that and you stood by it when it came down to that big sickness we had 4 or 5 years ago.
Yes.
Can we talk about that? Like, how many years did you do with the PD, first of all?
Yeah. So I did my 4 years with the service, and then I did some stateside contracting stuff, and then I needed an out. And so I self-enrolled, or I did self-sponsorship through NIC to go through the police academy.
Like the most decorated self-sponsor in the history of NIC. But yes, he wasn't hired by an agency yet.
And
You're not a DEI hire?
No. Huh. And then
I was taken by all the short guys.
Yeah, they were all the tall guys' slots had been taken at that point. So then, I did a reserve position with like the summertime bike stuff, which was kind of fun, and learned a lot. And then I realized, and another thing too, at the time before I became law enforcement is, I got out of the military and I just really wasn't too happy with the time politically. There was, things happening and the Constitution wasn't really being talked about in a positive way.
Are you talking like 2009, 2010?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And,
I was in then.
Yeah. And I just was becoming demoralized. Why did I go serve during 9/11 to come back and see our country not being proud of red, white, and blue and saying we support the troops, but then trying to take away the Constitution? And I just really got tore up about it. And one of the things is at the time there was a ton of law enforcement videos of people just doing bad things and with, infringing on people's rights, bad arrests, bad uses of force. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to self-sponsor and I'm going to take a look. Right? I don't know.
You got GI Bill, take a look, see what it's all about.
So I did that, and then I realized that the guys here, Jeff was one of those that really was like, no, these guys really seem like they're like-minded individuals. And so when I was asked to at least apply for the reserve position, I did that and then got picked up full-time after the reserve position. I think it was November. I don't remember the year now.
Yeah.
But I ended up being 9 years with Coeur d'Alene Police. I did SWAT, became SWAT sniper, less lethal instructor, firearms instructor. Obviously, right out of the my probation period, I became a cadre at the police academy.
Yep.
I helped with CQB training, just from experience stuff. So
when I was fresh on the SWAT team, I got to be instructed by Cohen again. So I was like,
heart rate went up immediately.
Here we go. Yeah, I'm about to get yelled at all over again. This will be good times.
Less enthusiastic.
No, but excellent instructor, especially on SWAT. That was a huge loss just because of the training quality and everything else. Because you're on the team, he did not allow standards to be reduced. It was, we're not wasting any time, and we have a higher standard and higher mark to hit. And I think a lot of that came from. Now, when you were Recon, were you guys primarily small units?
Yeah, we worked in 6-man teams. It's just you have to be a jack of all trades. You don't want to be the lowest standard. You don't want to be the guy everybody's pulling. So
right.
And honestly, it's kind of crazy when I look back, and we didn't really have those kind of guys. Like everybody ran shoulder to shoulder. You finish together, you win together.
Right.
And we understood too. I mean, we're not like meatheads that are dumb. If somebody's hurting, you help. Right.
Yeah.
And so, we lift each other up, and at the same time, everybody's like, I don't want to be a disappointment. So
that's the perfect environment.
Well, it's a different standard for a small unit because our SWAT team's generally a small unit, or we work in small units depending on what the project was or what the call out was. And man, you could see the drive towards that. And I think all of us had a tendency to gravitate towards small unit tactics or groups or even smaller agencies. Our shifts were 5 or 6 man shifts on patrol. Man, that was the best because everybody knew everybody. You'd hear voice inflections on the radio. You knew what everybody else. It was so much fun. When you could really run and go get stuff on the streets, it was a blast. But SWAT was the same way.
Yeah, when I first got there, we didn't even have night vision on the team. We couldn't even wear them on our helmets. We didn't have clip-ons. And so I asked to kind of look into that and, start to find out how we can improve that because, night vision to me, when you think night vision in the title, you're like, oh, it's only used at night. And I'm like, no, what do we do? Cut the power.
Yeah.
Now there's no light inside the building and you're blind and now you're putting on white light everywhere. It's like, maybe we could do that differently. And so, it was just pushing those, helping encourage that. We didn't have a less lethal multi-launcher. And I was like, after going to Les Lethal's course, I was like, listen, guys, if we want to have a higher effectiveness of impact, we should have a multi-launcher that's semi-auto, not pump. Get more rounds on target. And there was a situation where a gentleman was in the second story of a motel here, the old Ramada, and he's up there. It's
Don't
all
stay there if you come visit.
Yeah.
He's getting gassed out, and he's in the window, snotted up, and the team is out the door. I was outside as lethal cover with the less lethal, and they decided that on the radio, they're like, hey, we're going to make entry to make arrest. And so Joe on the multi-launcher, he's like, you go back in that room and I'm going to shoot you. And he basically said, I'm going back in the room. And so because it was multi-launcher, he was to get, I think it was 3 impacts out of 4. The 4th one hit the windowsill. And the guy fell on the ground and the team is able to go in and effectively make a safe arrest. Where
for him and for you.
Exactly.
Is that a 40 millimeter?
Yeah. And it was a big, I had seen it when I was on deployment. We had it as the Milcor, but I thought it was made by Veltor, but it's made by Milcor. Veltor was kind of the original commercial advertisements of it. But it's a big 6-shooter and it's semi-automatic. You twist it up.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. But it weighs like 20 pounds. So if you had to carry it, you got to be real morally convicted.
Yeah, but it can shoot a lot of different projectiles.
That's super handy.
Right around the same time we had that one, we had the one that was down on, well, we'll just say downtown area, but it was also, he was up in the attic in the second story. Remember, he kicked the hole out of it. And then he looked like Ace Ventura from the second one where he got stuck up there and was like coming out of the rhino and thrashing around. But we were shooting gas up through the vents of that attic.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good time.
That's so fun.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for getting that piece of equipment. I enjoyed myself.
That is cool. So I was a grenadier on our riot team. We're a very active riot team. But we had single shot break barrel 40s, but also really freaking cool, man. Yeah. We carried 50-meter aerial flashbangs, and then we call them sponge rounds, just like a hard rubber bullet. That's probably what you guys were shooting at that dude.
Yeah.
And very cool. Very nerve-wracking, to make when you're switching between rounds.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you're in a riot, and it's all hell's breaking loose. It's dark. There's gas, smoke, whatever. And you're like, all right, I'll make sure that's not an aerial flashbang.
Yes.
I'm about to dump into that dude.
Freaking wood baton. Something like that. Yeah. No, it's cool.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was that experience that I had with the guy at the second story window and, having that tool that when Spokane Police Department came to Genesis Arms and was like, hey, can you guys do a less lethal version of your shotgun? We were like, maybe. So
that's sexy.
We decided to go down that road, and we've done it now. So we launched that last year. So
it's just shooting like a sock round, like a 12-gauge sock.
Yeah, beanbag rounds, magazine fed. We had our first official use case out of Sacramento County about a month and a half ago.
So George Floyd riots. I was in Sac County. We were in Sacramento. That's where we did a lot of our work that whole couple weeks. Sac County doesn't fuck around.
No,
those boys are good to go.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a huge benefit to the OODA loop, the multi rounds, the reloading.
It's so fast. I mean, you shot
magazine fed.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
it's pretty rowdy.
Much fun with that. Dude.
Yeah, you said it. So Genesis Arms, we're going down that.
Let's go.
We're going down that hole right now.
We better bust one out. Can we grab it real quick? Can you reach? It's right behind.
Yeah, it's right behind
you.
I know you got short arms, but maybe you can reach over there.
So in the same year that we launched the less lethal, we had. Genesis had won an FBI contract for breaching. And one of the things that came out of that was the study of pressure as a breacher and the TBI effect it has on the end user. And so we ended up going around and looking for a suppressor company who would be willing to work with us to purpose build a 12-gauge suppressor,
my goodness,
and to launch a system that is purposely intended to be suppressed.
Hang on, I'm gonna put this up here.
Yep.
I'm gonna grab. You got one of the mags?
Yeah, right there. Grab the 5er.
So,
small one.
Okay.
So this ended up becoming this ended up becoming our flagship gun that we launched in 2024.
The Gen 12.
There we go.
Words don't describe the beauty of this thing. So if you're just listening and you're not watching, it's would you call it an AR style
100%.
semi-auto shotgun? Okay, or full auto. You guys are full auto
Yeah,
variations, right?
we do our in-house guns can be full auto, and those with the proper license can have it. No civilians can have full auto. So like everybody else that contacts us routinely, I'm sorry, I can't provide that as of yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So this thing is suppressed. It's got an EOTech on it, magazine fed. You guys also have drum magazines, right? 25 round drum magazines?
It's a 15.
15, okay.
And they've been a bane in my existence at the moment just because it's been a long time coming, but we are in production as we speak right now, and I'll have the production ones ready in about 3 or so weeks.
Oh my goodness.
For the 15 round drums.
Yeah.
If you want to lose your mind, go follow them on Instagram. It's just Genesis Arms, right?
Yeah.
And the sexiest, like, you will die because you just want to buy all of the shit that you guys post. It's amazing.
There is a shockingly low amount of kick, and you can stay on target with a really fast split. For it being a shotgun, it kind of blows your mind.
Yeah. Most people say it's consistent with a 308 or less, but it definitely doesn't feel like a 12 gauge.
No.
And this one is really unique because it was designed primarily as a breaching tool. However, what we found is that patterning with buckshot is the same as an 18-inch barrel, and I can easily go out to 100, 120 yards with a slug and effectively strike with accuracy consistent with an 18-inch gun with this gun here. And this whole gun that's on the table is only 26 inches in overall length. So this Gen 12
My goodness.
breaks the mold on everything. 26 inches in overall length, magazine fed, 5-inch barrel, suppressed, and has minimal recoil comparatively. So
if you were to pick one gun,
it's this one.
that could do it all.
This gun right here, this shocks me every time I do a demo. And this is, I tell people too when I do my demos, I'm not a shotgun guy. So don't think like I'm out here promoting 12 gauge. No, I'm promoting Gen 12 because the problem with shotguns is the manual of arms. It is the ammo capacity, and it is ammo management. Those are the three inherent problems. You know what isn't a problem with 12 gauge? Lethality.
Yeah, effectiveness. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and that's lethality against doors, lethality against cars, and obviously threats. And when you talk about that, and this is just what I'll call a topic of conversation that I like to have regarding capability. So if you're using an AR, which honestly, I'm a huge proponent of an AR. I have an AR, several ARs at my house. I use it as my go-to. That's only, sadly, because I don't actually have one of these myself. So
you don't get the family discount?
Listen, it's more complicated than that. But that is all changing in this year. But an AR is, a go-to. Why is it? Because it's got 30 rounds of capacity, easy recoil. If you had to reload, it's easy to grab another mag from your drawers. Either that's in your cabinet or your drawers.
Yep.
So it's easy to do those things. Manual of arms make it easy to train another person to be able to use it. Well, this fact is that this has the same manual of arms. So now you have that. And then you have magazines. So now you have capacity and you have ammo management. So all those benefits that you get from an AR are in this system. But you get one more great benefit, and that is the protection of lethality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you talk about, most guys statistically, when there's an active threat and you were to have to use an AR, which is a 223 or a 5.56 millimeter projectile, you need 6 to 8 rounds. It's a misnomer to believe that you could do it in one round. And so in one of the scenarios I give, and I'll just use the scenario, but there was circumstances at Uvalde where an officer saw a bad guy going into the school to do active shooting, and he's at 100 yards out, and he makes the decision to request permission to shoot at the guy with his AR and not, engage. But I question that all the conflict and things about that, which we all learn from. What if he did engage and he hits the suspect? What do we have? What do you think we have? Do we have a suspect going into the school or a suspect staying outside the school?
Going in.
Yeah.
I think he'd still make it in.
100%.
Depending on location of the shot.
100%. The likelihood of probability of being able to make that, ocular shot or a fatal shot with one round is very low. Mm-hmm. Okay. Scenarios change. I just told you I can use this gun at 100 yards.
With a slug.
And that is not 55 grains. Yeah. It's 450 grains. Now it gets out there and it finds this threat at 100 yards. Does it go into the school or does it stay outside?
I think in a puddle of blood and guts, it stays outside.
It does. Yeah. And so that is
some pieces outside, some pieces inside.
Little bone fragments on the wall.
That might be right.
Now, I say all that because people talk about capacity of 30 rounds, but when you have to use 6 to 8 rounds to make a bad guy not be a threat anymore, or protect yourself or another loved one, that's a lot of rounds. And so now when you do the math on a magazine of 30, how many people are you protecting yourself from? Potentially. So versus, you put in the 10 stick in this or a 15 round drum, you have a higher protection rate.
Well, and even I think about people being kitted up also, or armor piercing, maybe not even piercing. If you hit somebody in armor with a slug,
yes,
that is still going to be very effective. Your lethality is still going to be quite significant.
Yeah.
This is the distribution of force.
This is why shotguns are incredible. And people have a high in law enforcement should have a high level of respect if they're going against a person with a 12 gauge. Equally so, if police officers aren't having shotguns in the field, why is that?
Right.
And maybe they went away from it because of the problems of training, because they don't have the budgets to train people on the shotgun to become proficient enough to do the ammo management skills, to do the changeovers, to do all the things that you need to do. Most of the law enforcement demos I've done, when they get behind the Gen 12, they're like, this can be a one-day training.
Right. It's an AR.
That's exactly right.
It's not.
So even to the point of this offset, right? This is a high rise from GBRS. Really like this setup with the more compact stock, which is those extend out. It's like a MP5. Now, it's pretty tall. Okay, it's going to be near 3 inches. But if you had this on an AR-15 and you have to account for your bore over sight, your sight over bore holdovers, it's the same on your AR as it is on this. So you're actually training one sight picture, which is really important. So depending on your distance, whatever you do with your AR, you hold the dot in the same spot to get the impact that you want. It's the same on this. So we do a 50-yard zero with slugs. You walk up to 5 yards. And if you wanted a center mass shot, you just hold that 3 inches over bore, and it goes right to where you want it. And as you walk back, you just start to drag that down, get to 25, and it's just a negligible holdover. And then 50, you're at the same. And then at 100, you have a little bit of a count depending on the slug that you're shooting. But 1,600 feet per second slug, there's no holdover. It's at 100 yards, you're just still holding dead center, and you're going to make an impact. So,
God dang,
it's completely. Every time somebody uses this, they go, I can't believe how comfortable it is.
Right.
The felt recoil, obviously the reloads. It's a total game changer for shotgun platforms. And many people will say, well, listen, I've seen mag-fed shotguns out there before, and I know when you're looking at GenesisArms.com, you're going to be looking at our price tag. All those other shotguns.
That's probably your biggest fight is that argument there, right? They're not cheap.
No, they're not. And it used to be, okay? But honestly, this weapon system right here, I was concerned because this outfitted as you see it. This was a limited run. It was our FDE anodized. We sold it just like you see it with the rail scales, the B5 grip, EOTech, the TAN suppressor, and the GBRS mount. Retailed for $6,000. So we sold out of that as a limited drop in the first 12 hours of it being posted.
Jesus.
Yeah, and it really surprised me at how well this was moving. But the reality is that we do something very significant. One, we're American, so we're not buying this from another country like Turkey or whoever else is going to make it and then import it in. You can call us, you can email us. We have a great customer service program. So all of the things, if you did have issues, we can service it for you. Those other companies, you can't get spare parts. You can't get them serviced. And so they really have a lifespan of about 2,000 rounds, and they die. I did a 10,000 round burn down on one gun in 3 days.
Damn.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up failing?
So the extractors at 5,000 gave out.
Right.
So we replaced extractor springs. Other than that, the gun actually shot the whole time. And we had about a 1% failure rate on like a feeding issue or something like that, which ultimately comes down to either ammo or magazine.
And you did that yourself?
So I did it with one other person.
It's brutal.
It was honestly.
When you talk about seeing what other men can endure, there you go, bro.
You just did it for me. Like, yeah, that sounds like fun.
Rounds. Well, just the loading.
It literally was getting up in the morning and getting to the range at like 8 o'clock, and we didn't stop till 5 for 3 days in a row.
It's not even fun anymore.
And you're just literally, I didn't know what shooting trash was until I did that. I was like, don't even set up targets. We're just going to shoot trash. And we just shoot this mound of the dirt, and we shoot that mound of dirt, shoot that mound of dirt.
Wow.
And then pretty soon it was just spraying and praying. You're not even down on the gun. You're just
the weight of all the lead that you fired that day. There's a lot of weight.
I don't know. I bet at least 10% of it's in my blood.
I think so. That's a freaking awesome looking platform.
Okay, how much? I haven't fired. Eric has one of these, not this one, of course. He's not balling that much.
Sorry.
The suppressor. How much does that reduce the decibels?
Yeah. So like we were talking about, I really was focused mostly on pressure because of TBI. Mm-hmm. And so when Huxworks came to us, they were like, hey, or when I had solicited them for help on partnering with a suppressor company, they came back to us and said, hey, we're interested in working with you on this. What do you know? What kind of goals and mission do you have outlined for this platform? Now, mind you, a 5-inch barrel, if I take that suppressor off and I shot it inside of a closed room like this, you might go brain dead. That's why this 5-inch gun doesn't get sold without a suppressor. The concussion is so intense. I did the testing for pattern testing at Center Target here in town, and I shot 75 rounds with the suppressor, and I was like, oh, I better do a thing where I take it off and I test without the suppressor to get a baseline of what it, how much better is it or how much worse is it or whatever. I did 4 rounds unsuppressed inside, and I was like, we'll never do that again.
Right.
TBI from that.
I guarantee. I was dizzy. I was loopy.
Wow.
I was like, I'd never experienced that shooting indoors, and I was like, holy cow, do not do that.
Note to self.
Yeah, I'm
danger.
Absolutely.
We have people say like, hey, can I get it without this? No, I don't want you to be dumb.
Yeah.
Please do not take off your suppressor. So Huxworks came out and they gave us all the data sheets on it and stuff, and they found out that with the instruments, 60% reduction in pressure.
Wow.
So I just completed a demo with the Netherlands, and that was their number one. I said, hey, I know you guys are going for real short, and this is just a few inches longer. I said, but just trust me when it comes to this. And so they were testing both unsuppressed 7-inch barrels versus the 5-inch with the suppressor. And we were in a shoot house at Academy, which is the old Blackwater Training Center in North Carolina. And so we're shooting doors, and they're doing the thing. And at the end, they were like, you're right. Like, it is way more enjoyable to shoot it with the suppressor. Recoil reduction, the sound of it is way better. And all those benefits that professionals would want, you want.
Right.
Like if you're in your home,
yeah,
you don't want to be like not being able to hear what somebody around you is saying, like one of your loved ones or your team, so to speak, right? Like,
yeah.
So you want that reduction, and you don't want to be loopy from firing something crazy in there. And then obviously it helps with flash suppression and all that stuff too. So, but it's only, I don't remember off the top of my head, it's probably 6 to 8 dBs less. But like I said, it gives you so much more. For example, at 5 yards without the suppressor, if I remember right, it's like 24 inches of spread at 5 yards.
Wow.
It's 5 inches of spread with the same ammo at 5 yards, putting the suppressor on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which was the same as an 18-inch barrel at the same distance. And so that's when my whole mind was like, what?
Right.
26-inch overall length versus a 40-something inch overall length 18-inch barrel, 870.
Yeah.
There's no comparison. So
what's the flagship model like for civilian use?
This guy right here.
This one? Okay.
So this actually surprised me too, not to get too much into our, what we're moving, how we're moving it. But when we launched this, we were waiting for the Huxworks suppressors and we were building the guns. And, again, as the sales lead, I was like, I really don't know what a market looks like for this. It's never existed. I mean, people wanted this after like No Country for Old Men. They're like, where's my suppressed shotgun? We've delivered it for you now. Right. But, so I really wasn't sure. I knew it was really cool. All the testing said it's awesome. It was remarkable. One dealer bought 50 of them and he sold all 50 in the first month.
Holy shit, man.
And I was like, no way. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I got another 50 right now. And I was like, okay, this blew me away. This became our number one selling gun over our 10.5 other firearm, which is completely not expected. 2-stamp gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's not cheap, but people, we do a lot of demos. We get out there. I get out there a lot to get around to show people. And because when you get behind it, here's the doubt. To see is be deceived, but to feel is to believe.
Right.
And I say that at the demos, and that's actually from when I did martial arts. You know, and another one from martial arts was, he who hesitates meditates in a horizontal position.
I like it.
Yeah, those are some good ones. But, when you get behind it, you shoot it, and people just are like, I got to have it, because it's completely different than any other shotgun. And then the best part is that, we go to Walmart and buy our ammo. If I'm running low on a demo, I'll just go to Walmart and buy their birdshot. It's not like I got to get high brass rounds.
Right.
I'm just buying the cheap stuff, throwing it through the gun, and it's running. And so guys will go to the range and they'll shoot 250 rounds of shotgun, and they won't be complaining about it.
Right.
And they're like, that was fun. I want to do that again. And so my son, he's 12 years old. I took him out and shot this gun. So it's totally a game changer when it comes to 12 gauge and usability for sure.
Well, it's no surprise that teams are into this, right? Especially because for CQB, you just think about what the practical application in a CQB situation are for this, and even the less penetration through walls and what you commonly run into with like 5.56 rounds.
Yeah. Is there an application for this in Tier 1 units?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not at liberty to speak to those in high detail, but yes, I would say,
Would it be like just breaching, or is there more?
So that I'll tell you the conversation I have with everybody, and actually, Washington State Patrol is the first law enforcement agency to see it before I said it. So, I believe we traditionally use breachers as a stowed item with a rifle, and we fight with our rifle, we put that away, and we breach a door, put that shotgun away, and we get our rifle back up, and then team makes entry. It's kind of the traditional type of style and feel. And I'm like, well, that's all time. Switching guns, all this stuff, pumping, all the things that you have to do to defeat that door is longer when you look at this. Well, why do they stow the gun and draw the rifle back? Well, because their shotguns generally only have 3 or 4 rounds on them. Well, would you want to enter a room with 1 shotgun round? No. Exactly. So, right. But if I had a 10-round magazine and I breached the door and I had 6 shotgun rounds, would you be okay?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially in a 15x15 room or a 10x10.
Yes.
Yeah. Hard to miss.
So that's the conversation I have is that, if you think about how TTPs are used today of breaching and then stowing, why could it not breach and fight? Well, this allows that conversation to be had. And so generally they leave that conversation and they're like, I'm going to think about that. But ultimately it takes adoption. TTPs are very hard to change. But like I said, Washington State Patrol, they actually were like, no. Because I did a demo, showed them, had the little breacher out because that's what they're looking for, had something like this there. And they're like, no, we want the stock. And I was like, why? He's like, because I don't think we need to stow it. I think if there's a lethal threat, our ammunition can do both. And I was like, I think
everybody's going to want to be breacher now.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's going to want to be breacher.
100%. And there's even ammo now that I've got to test from like Hornady. Yeah, here, there's a little button right here. There's ammo from Hornady. It's called a TAP 12 gauge, and it's a frangible ammunition. So it's designed for breaching a door, but then it is also designed to be a precision slug. So I'm going to order some of that stuff up, and I'm going to test what distance I can get with it, because that would be a one-purpose round.
Perfect.
Was that we were at G9? Didn't they say they were coming out with a shotgun?
Yeah, that's their next. That's next on their list.
It's about time.
Yeah.
Joshua, if you hear this,
let's go, buddy.
It's about time.
Right.
I literally call you every year.
I mean,
when are you gonna give me one?
Holy shit! One of their external hollow points in a 12 gauge. Oh my goodness,
devastating.
Like, I don't even know if that would be fair. I mean, it's just be like disgusting.
It doesn't hurt. You guys are like 6 minutes away from each other. That could be a lot of fun.
So, that's true.
So are these fully manufactured in Post Falls?
So we do all final assembly locally. Almost, I'd say about 80+%, maybe even more, is actually within the inland area. So between Spokane and Hayden, we try to have as much of that localized, regionalized as we can. So employ our locals.
Just another fine product coming from North Idaho. Come on. Dude, this thing is legit. Damn it! I had finally just convinced myself I don't need one.
I know.
And now you got me going again.
I know. Well, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to have Cody be like, "Hey, about that suppressor."
Yeah. Every time,
15-round drum.
I'm on Instagram and you guys pop some video up shooting full auto,
they're
just
awesome.
like this, and with a drum mag. I'm like, oh my goodness.
I know. They're freaking
Need
cool.
that in my life. Wow. So, did John Wick make these super popular too? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to discount anything there. You know, Taryn, the TTI crew, Taryn Tactical Innovations. You know, Taryn's been great to work with. You know, him, the prop director who we met, Rock, just fantastic. Was really, you know, we obviously didn't get to go to the movie, you know, filming and that part.
Right.
We're not that cool. But, you know, ultimately how that whole process actually happened and kind of came to is another one of our coworkers, Eric. He introduced me to another Eric who wanted to see our gun and do a demo for it. And he's an engineer for Bravo Company Manufacturing. And he told me a story that kind of surprised me, which was he used to work for Knight's Armament, and he said that they had developed a short recoil operated 12 gauge that worked on an SR-25 lower. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's what our gun is, short recoil operated, works on an AR-10 lower. Ours just happens to be a DPMS cut. And I was like, well, why didn't they ever come out with it? And apparently at the time, Eugene Stoner was still working there. And he said, well, it takes a genius to make a magazine. So they quit the project because it requires a 12 gauge magazine, and one didn't exist at the time. So they just kind of scrapped the project at that point. But, you know, our founder, Theodore, he, you know, him and his old business partner who stepped away from Genesis itself as the co-founder, really saw a vision, and, you know, we are operating on that vision today. And it's just a absolute miracle that it got to where it is. So after the demo, Eric sent me a text message and he said, hey, would you like to meet Taryn and see if your gun would be suitable for John Wick 4? And I was like, absolutely. Who would say no to that?
Right?
Yep.
So, you know, it would have been, you know, I also wasn't sure, like, how popular could John Wick 4 actually be. Man, I really underestimated that too. And we were very, very thankful. But there was the, you know, stuff during that whole time period. So the movie, you know, the one prop director that was there, the whole, you know, Corona thing started, and then we got put on hold. So that everything was stopped. And then all of a sudden we get a call, hey, it's back on, and there's a new prop director, so we need to figure out, you know, what he wants to use. And so we got all that stuff sorted out, and it settled on what we call now the TTI Gen 12 JW4 Dracaris. And Dracaris is actually, you know, that was Taryn's idea. And Chad, the director for John Wick 4, I guess has these undertones of the movie, the series Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And so, and also in the movie, there's the top-down scene with the shotgun where he shoots dragon's breath and it catches everything on fire.
Yeah.
So on the safety selector, you have safe, fire, and Dracaris, which it says Dracaris.
That's cool.
So and
I love it.
And it's exposed when you flip the safety. So from safe to fire, Dracaris is shown. So that was just a little, you know, little Benny there.
That's cool.
How many employees do you guys have up there?
Oh man, it's today that number is going to change. I mean, last year we grew 300% as a company.
Yeah.
So, you know, we got to stand up, you know, more guys from the international side of the house, more sales guys, but also just in the production side. I mean, we're enclosing parts of the building. We, you know, making plans to put new buildings on the property. So, you know, it's hard to say, honestly. Next year it's going to be way more. So, but you know, we need qualified people. So if anybody's interested, just bombard us with some stuff. We're going to put up a link on the website for people to submit resumes that might be interested.
Oh, I think there's a few vets that would listen to our podcast that would be into that sort of thing.
Do they get discounts? That's probably
Yeah, we do offer discounts for all
There you
vets.
go.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Actually, I think I got in before they got real crazy.
Yeah.
Right place, right time.
Okay, so how many roughly are you guys selling a year? Like, is it like what's that volume looking like now?
Well, I mean, let's just say this: when we had the first conversation with you know, Taryn and the guys at TTI about being in John Wick 4, we were doing 45 guns a month.
Yeah.
Now you're doing 45 guns a day.
Dang.
So
that's insane.
Yeah. And I just got back from an international trade show. We picked up 6 new countries. I visited, partners that we have over there now. And, our company, the company itself has no slowing down. I mean, we're really on the forefront of innovation, something new, and that just hadn't existed in the space. And then for us, it does 2 things. One, on the commercial side for civilian use, it makes a shotgun viable. In fact, I did a commercial for the drop of this tan gun called Riding Shotgun, just to go on the old, remember when you're a kid, you're running around like, I got shotgun. Well, where'd that come from? You want that in your front seat.
There.
Yeah.
So, the commercial side has been really supportive of this. And then on the professional side, it comes more into, like what's happening in Ukraine with the development of a drone war.
Right.
And that is a real threat. From the Iraq campaigns, we had IEDs and, insurgency, close quarter, some of the or distance firing, right? Like it just depended where you were on your, outside the FOB or whatever areas of operation you had. So this is way different. When you have to have a threat above and that thing can either like drop something on you or can just kamikaze in, like this is a crazy thing. So what they found is the best tool to knock those things down as a last line of defense is shotguns.
Yeah, I believe that. We talked to G9 about that too. He that's crossed his mind.
He
a couple
did say
times
something about drone shot.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like,
That's
but
the next
when
step.
it's Joshua, I imagine it looks pretty damn cool. Whatever it is he comes up with.
It's going to be some
That
dork.
man's a genius.
Some
Yeah.
dork ninjury, dude. It's going to be some dork ninjury. But it's pretty cool to see that sort of platform and watching the evolution of where it started and where it is now. And you guys have to benefit from, because you talked about this being a 2-stamper, that process being expedited now. People aren't waiting the 10 to 11 months for their stamps to come in.
Right. I'm really hoping they get rid of the whole NFA Act as a whole and allow that thing to just be sold, without any waiting period or any of that stuff. Because it would just help the case more. I mean, there's no reason for the long waiting period. In fact, the NFA, when that tax was imposed by Congress, it was called it was like an infringement tax. They did it to delay and dissuade people from actually purchasing these items. So that's in its own, construction was to violate your Second Amendment right. So it's time that tax goes away. Obviously, NFA items have grown way more in popularity with suppressors, and it's just time.
I'm kind of waiting. I want a suppressor for one of my ARs, and I'm just kind of waiting because I'm like, maybe it'll happen soon, and I can avoid all the nonsense.
Well, I'd say this is shotguns as American as North Idaho, made in North Idaho.
Well put, bro.
Pretty freaking
beautiful.
cool.
GenesisArms.com is that the spot. Okay, we'll put the link in the show notes. We'll link your social media on there too, so you can go on their Instagram and get extremely jealous and then want to buy one as well. Cody Cohen, thanks, brother. That was an absolute pleasure.
That was awesome.
Great conversation. We'll have to do it again sometime. And we need to go shooting. I need to shoot.
Yeah.
Full auto.
That's the easiest part.
I'll bring my own shells. Yeah,
I kind of want to see those less lethals in action, dude. I just want to see what it does to like wood targets.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. Oh, so fast,
like 15 beanbag rounds.
I'll get you the video from the Sacramento, the news clip, so we could maybe put that over.
Oh yeah, we can put that on.
Would love to see that.
Please do. Cool. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, catch you later.